I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
The gavel slammed down. The courtroom froze. An old black woman stood at the front. Her hands were bound in heavy chains. Her gray hair clung to her face, wet with tears. She looked fragile, yet her presence filled the room with quiet defiance. Behind her, 3 men in dark suits raised their hands to take the oath. Their eyes never left her. 25 years ago, she had saved them. Back then, they were just homeless kids on the streets, cold, hungry, forgotten. She gave them a roof, a meal, a family. And now they were the only ones who could save her from a life sentence. The question lingered in the air, unspoken yet deafening. How could a woman who sacrificed everything for 3 lost children end up accused of a crime that might steal the rest of her life? And what would those 3 men say to change her fate? Atlanta, 1998. A cold night. Rain pouring down in sheets. Evelyn, a widowed woman in her mid-30s, walked home after her shift at a church soup kitchen. She clutched a thin coat tight around her body. Her shoes squelched in the puddles. Then she heard it. Whispers, childlike, faint. She stopped in the narrow alley. Lightning cracked. In that flash of light, she saw them. 3 small figures huddled under a broken awning, soaked through, shivering, eyes wide with fear and hunger. Her breath caught. "Are you out here alone?" Her voice trembled. The oldest, maybe 13, stared at her with a sharp, guarded gaze. He wrapped his arms protectively around the smallest boy. The middle one said nothing, teeth chattering in the cold. Evelyn's heart twisted. She had nothing herself. Just a run-down house, a half-empty fridge, a paycheck that barely covered the bills. Taking in 3 strange kids was madness. But leaving them out here in the rain, that was unthinkable. "Come," she said softly. "I've got hot soup." The oldest hesitated. The little one whimpered. Finally, they rose, moving toward her in silence. Her house was small, cracked walls, leaking roof. But it was warm. She handed them towels, dry clothes, steaming bowls of soup. "I'm Evelyn," she said gently. "What are your names?" The oldest finally spoke. "Marcus." The middle one mumbled. "Daniel." The youngest, with a spark of defiance, lifted his chin. "Caleb." Evelyn repeated their names quietly, as if sealing a promise. Marcus, tough, angry, too old for his age. Daniel, quiet, cautious but intelligent eyes. Caleb, restless, hungry, yet still able to smile. She tucked blankets around them that night. They fell asleep almost instantly, huddled together on the old couch. Evelyn sat by the window, watching the rain pound against the glass. Her mind churned. She had a choice. Let them stay, or push them back into the streets. The choice didn't feel like a choice at all. By morning, the neighborhood was already whispering. Evelyn brought strangers home. She's probably after government checks. Those kids are thieves. Watch your purses. Evelyn heard it all. She didn't care. Because she remembered their eyes in the rain, and she knew if she turned her back, those boys would not survive the winter. Marcus resisted from the start. He distrusted everything. He pushed away his plate. He refused to wash his hands. "If you stay here, you follow rules," Evelyn told him firmly. "Wash before eating. Tell the truth. That's it." Daniel obeyed quietly. Caleb giggled and called her Mama Eve within days. But Marcus burned with anger. His stare was a wall. Evelyn didn't blame him. She saw through it. Anger was just pain in disguise. That first week, Evelyn ate less so the boys could eat more. At night, her stomach growled in the dark. Yet she smiled because she heard them breathing deeply in their sleep. It wasn't duty. It wasn't pity. It was love. A love that, years later, would place her in the very chains now rattling in a silent courtroom. Life in Evelyn's little house shifted overnight. 3 boys, 1 woman, 4 strangers under one roof, trying to pretend they belonged together. The mornings were the hardest. Evelyn cooked oatmeal on the stove, stretching sugar and milk as far as they would go. Caleb devoured his bowl in seconds. Daniel ate slowly, grateful. Marcus pushed his spoon around in silence. "Eat," Evelyn told him. "I don't want it." "You do. You're just too proud to admit it." He glared at her. But when she turned her back, the bowl was empty, the house filled with noise. Caleb asked questions every 5 seconds. Daniel read whatever scraps of books he could find. Marcus argued with everything: curfew, chores, rules. Evelyn stood her ground. She wasn't just giving them food, she was giving them structure, something they had never known. At night, she knelt by her bed, whispering prayers. "Lord, I don't have enough, but please make me enough." The neighborhood watched with suspicion. One afternoon, a knock rattled her door. A neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stood there with folded arms. "I've seen those boys hanging around," she said sharply. "Don't you know who they are? Thieves, runaways, bad news." "They're children," Evelyn replied quietly. "They'll ruin you." The words stung, but Evelyn didn't flinch. She closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. The next day, 2 police officers arrived. Someone had called them. "Ma'am, are these boys yours?" Evelyn lifted her chin. "They are now." "Do you have papers, guardianship?" "Number just a home." The officers exchanged looks. The boys froze in the corner, wide-eyed. Caleb clung to Evelyn's skirt. Marcus stepped forward suddenly, chest out, jaw set. "We're staying with her." The room went still. One officer sighed. "Keep an eye on them. If we get complaints, we'll be back." Evelyn nodded. Relief washed through her, for now they were safe. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn taught them small things: how to fold laundry, sweep floors, take turns in the bathroom. She demanded respect, but gave trust in return. Caleb began calling her Mama Eve in front of strangers. Daniel started to smile more. Marcus remained a storm cloud, always on edge, but he didn't run away. One evening, Evelyn sat them down at the table. "You boys have choices," she said. "I can't give you riches. I can't promise an easy road, but I can give you a roof and food if you want it." Daniel nodded. "I want it." Caleb grinned. "Me too." Marcus looked at her hard and cold. "What if we don't?" "Then you'll leave," Evelyn said simply. "But if you stay as family." The word family hung in the air. Heavy, dangerous, beautiful. Marcus didn't answer, but he didn't leave. Trouble, however, found them. At the corner store, Caleb slipped a candy bar into his pocket. The clerk grabbed him. "Thief!" Evelyn rushed down, breathless. She pulled Caleb close. "He's with me." The clerk frowned. "He steals again. I'll call the cops." That night, Evelyn's voice shook as she scolded the boy. "You don't take what's not yours." "But I was hungry," Caleb cried. "So am I, every day, but hunger doesn't excuse stealing." His little face crumpled. Tears spilled. Evelyn pulled him into her arms, rocking him gently. Marcus watched from the shadows, fists clenched. He knew hunger. He knew stealing. He couldn't understand why she cared so much. Another week, another test. The landlord came by, eyeing the children. "You can't afford all this. They're not yours. You're breaking the lease." "I pay rent." "That's all that matters," Evelyn replied. The landlord sneered. Not for long. But amidst the struggle, something new began to grow. One Sunday morning, Daniel tugged Evelyn's sleeve. "Can we go to school?" The question stunned her. "School?" He nodded shyly. "I want to learn. Be someone." For the first time in years, Evelyn's eyes filled with hope. She promised she would find a way. Marcus scoffed. "School won't change nothing." Daniel shot back. "Maybe not for you." The 2 boys clashed constantly. Evelyn stepped in, fierce. "Enough. You fight, you lose everything I've built here. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Silence fell. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She had nothing, no papers, no savings, no support, only faith. But when she looked at their sleeping faces, she whispered the same words she had spoken the first night. If I leave them out there, they'll die, and I won't let that happen. What she didn't know was that saving them would one day drag her into a nightmare she couldn't escape. Years passed. The house changed, but not by much. The roof still leaked, the paint still peeled, but the boys grew taller, stronger, louder. Daniel was the first to shift. He loved books. He borrowed worn paperbacks from neighbors, math, science, anything he could get his hands on. He dreamed of white coats and stethoscopes. I want to be a doctor, he told Evelyn one night at the kitchen table. His eyes glowed. I want to help people, like you helped us. Evelyn smiled, tired but proud. Then you will. Caleb, the youngest, laughed at Daniel's seriousness. I'll be a lawyer. Someone has to keep you out of trouble. He grinned, pointing at Marcus, especially him. Marcus didn't laugh. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes hard. Dreams don't put food on the table. The world doesn't care who you are. It only cares how tough you are. Evelyn's heart sank. Marcus's walls were higher than ever. Tension thickened in the house. Daniel tried to study in peace. Caleb bounced off the walls, restless and mischievous. Marcus came home late, silent and angry. One night, Evelyn smelled smoke. She rushed outside and found Marcus behind the house, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "Where did you get that?" she demanded. He shrugged. "Bought it." "With what money?" "Doesn't matter." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "It matters if you're stealing." Marcus's eyes flashed. "Don't act like my mother. You're not." The words cut deep. For a moment, Evelyn couldn't breathe, but then she steadied herself. "I don't have to be your mother to care if you destroy yourself." He turned away, exhaling smoke into the night. The fights grew louder. Daniel accused Marcus of dragging them down. Caleb tried to play peacemaker but usually made things worse. Evelyn felt the family she had built slipping through her fingers. Then came the night Marcus vanished. Evelyn woke to an empty bed in the corner. His few belongings were gone. No note, no goodbye, just silence. Daniel sat at the table, fists clenched. "He left. I told you he would." Caleb's face crumpled. "He'll come back, right?" Evelyn swallowed hard. She wanted to believe it. But deep down, she knew Marcus had chosen the streets again. The years blurred. Daniel excelled in school, tutoring younger kids for pocket money. Caleb argued his way into debate club, discovering a sharp tongue and a natural talent for persuasion. Evelyn worked double shifts, scrubbing floors, serving food, sewing for neighbors. Anything to keep the lights on. But Marcus's absence was a shadow that never left. Then, one summer evening, everything changed. The police came knocking again. Their faces were grim. "Ma'am, we're investigating a missing person." Your neighbor, Mr. Holbrook, Evelyn, frowned. "The man across the street?" The officer nodded. "He hasn't been seen in weeks. Last anyone heard, he was in an argument. With you." Evelyn froze. The memory stabbed her. Yes, she had argued with Holbrook. He'd accused her of letting stray dogs ruin the neighborhood. He threatened to report her, to have the boys taken away. She had shouted back, voice shaking with fury, "If you touch my family, you'll regret it." Now, Holbrook was gone. Rumors spread fast. Evelyn killed him. She buried him in the yard. Those boys helped her hide it. The whispers grew into something sharper. Accusations, glares. One afternoon, as Evelyn walked home with groceries, a woman hissed, "Murderer!" Evelyn kept walking, face burning. That night, Caleb slammed his fist on the table. Why don't you fight back? Why don't you tell them the truth? Daniel's voice was low. Because words don't change what people want to believe. Evelyn sat silently, staring at her calloused hands. Weeks passed. The tension never eased. Police questioned her again and again. Did she see Holbrook? Did she threaten him? Did she know where he went? She repeated the same words. I don't know. I never hurt him. But doubt crept in. Not just in the town. In her own home. One night, Caleb whispered to Daniel, thinking she couldn't hear. What if she really did it? The words shattered her. She tried to hold the family together. She cooked, prayed, worked. But suspicion wrapped around her like chains. Daniel studied harder than ever, burying himself in books. Caleb grew sharper, his jokes tinged with anger. Marcus's absence haunted every conversation. And Evelyn? Evelyn felt the cracks widening. She didn't know it yet. But the storm had only begun. The missing neighbor was just the spark. The fire was still coming. The knock on the door came before dawn. Hard. Relentless. Evelyn opened it to find two officers standing there, rain dripping from their hats. Behind them, flashing lights painted the street red and blue. Evelyn Harris? Yes? Her voice cracked. You're under arrest for the suspected murder of Thomas Holbrook. Her heart stopped. Caleb stumbled out of his room, rubbing his eyes. Daniel froze in the hallway. Murder? That's insane, Caleb shouted. You can't take her. Daniel's voice broke, but the officers moved in. Cold hands snapped cuffs around Evelyn's wrists. Metal bit into her skin. Her boys, her family, watched as she was led into the storm. The interrogation room was gray, silent except for the hum of a flickering light. Evelyn sat at the table, wrists chained. Detective Harris leaned forward, voice smooth but sharp. You threatened Holbrook. Witnesses heard it. He disappears. And then we find this. He dropped a photograph on the table. A shovel. Dirt. A smear of what looked like blood on the handle, found in Evelyn's shed. Her chest tightened. That's not... Don't lie, the detective snapped. You said he'd regret crossing you. Did you make sure he did? Evelyn shook her head. Tears burned her eyes. I never touched him, I swear. But her words felt small, drowned out by the evidence piling against her. News spread like wildfire. Widow accused of neighbor's murder. Black woman hides body, police say. The whispers that had stalked her for years became screams. Strangers spat near her gate. Parents pulled their kids away from Daniel and Caleb. At school, Daniel overheard it. His mama's a killer. He'll end up in jail, too. Daniel clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. Caleb lashed out, getting into fights, shouting at anyone who dared insult Evelyn. Their safe house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a cage. The trial began months later. Evelyn walked into the courtroom in shackles, head held high despite the weight pressing her down. Marcus appeared that day, older, harder, but unmistakably the same boy who once glared at her across the dinner table. He sat in the back, arms folded. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just watched. The prosecution painted Evelyn as bitter, dangerous, unstable. She took in 3 boys, the lawyer said, voice slick, not out of kindness but control. And when a neighbor threatened to expose her, she silenced him. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Daniel and Caleb sat frozen. Every word felt like a knife. The defense had little to fight with. No body had been found. Only circumstantial evidence, her argument with Holbrook, the shovel, the rumors. Still, the story sounded convincing, too convincing. At night, Daniel whispered to Caleb in their shared apartment. What if she did do it? Caleb shot up, furious. Don't you dare, you know her, she's not like that. But the evidence can lie. People can lie, she never has. Silence hung between them. Neither noticed Marcus standing outside in the hall, listening. Back in prison, Evelyn sat alone on the cot. She replayed every moment in her head, the argument with Holbrook, the anger in her voice, the hatred in his eyes. Had she cursed herself that day? Had her words doomed her? She whispered to the darkness, "Lord, give me strength. I am innocent. Please let them believe." But doubt gnawed at her soul. The trial dragged on. Witness after witness took the stand. Each one chipped away at her reputation. "I saw her yelling at Holbrook. She said she'd make him regret it. She had those boys doing her bidding." The picture was clear. Evelyn was no saint. She was a criminal. On the third week, Marcus finally stepped forward. Gasps filled the courtroom as he walked to the witness stand. He looked at Evelyn, then at the jury. His jaw tightened. "I know something about that night," he said slowly. Every head turned. Daniel gripped the bench. Caleb's heart pounded. Evelyn's breath caught. Marcus's eyes burned with secrets that could save her or destroy her. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order!" And in that charged silence, one thing became clear. The fate of Evelyn Harris was no longer in her hands. It rested in Marcus's. The courtroom fell into silence as Marcus adjusted the microphone. His hands shook slightly, but his voice, deep, hardened by years of struggle, cut through the still air. "I was there the night Thomas Holbrook disappeared." A ripple went through the crowd. Reporters scrambled for their pens. Evelyn gripped the table, her eyes wide with shock. Marcus swallowed hard. "I used to sneak out sometimes back then to meet with the wrong people. That night, I saw Holbrook drunk, angry, and pacing near the edge of the property. He wasn't alone." "Go on," the defense lawyer urged, leaning forward. "There was another man, bigger, taller. They argued. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught words. Money, debt, threats. And then—" Marcus closed his eyes briefly, forcing himself to continue. "That man hit Holbrook. Hard. He fell. Didn't get back up." Gasps spread across the room. "And where was my client, Mrs. Harris?" the defense asked. "Inside. Asleep. She had nothing to do with it." I swear the prosecutor shot up. "Objection. Convenient story, 25 years late. Why should we believe you?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Because I was scared. I thought if I spoke up, they'd come for me. I was just a kid, but I can't let her rot in prison for something she didn't do." Evelyn's tears spilled freely. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, "My boy." The judge called a recess, but the court buzzed with chaos. Reporters swarmed outside. Some shouted, "Why hide the truth for decades?" Others asked, "Who was the mysterious man?" Daniel cornered Marcus in the hallway. His voice trembled with both fury and hope. "You knew? All these years, you knew Mom was innocent, and you said nothing?" Marcus lowered his gaze. "I was a coward." "No." Caleb's fists clenched. "You left her to die." Marcus didn't argue. He simply said, "I'm here now. Let me help fix this." That night, the brothers gathered in their cramped apartment. Documents and old newspapers spread across the floor. Marcus joined them for the first time in decades. The tension was thick, but the urgency was stronger. Daniel tapped the files. If Holbrook was in debt, maybe the records show something. Someone he owed. Someone dangerous enough to silence him. Caleb nodded. "And maybe that's the man you saw." Marcus frowned. "I remember something else. Tattoos. On his arm. A snake coiled around a dagger." The room went quiet. Daniel whispered, "That's a gang mark. Southside Vipers. They ran this area back then." The pieces began to align. For days, the brothers chased shadows. They visited old bars, pulled property records, and begged retired cops for forgotten case files. Most doors slammed in their faces. Others warned them to stop digging. But Caleb refused to stop. "If we quit now, she dies in there." Finally, a breakthrough came. An old bartender remembered Holbrook, remembered his debts, remembered the man with the snake and dagger tattoo who always came to collect. "He went by Victor Kane," the bartender muttered, eyes darting nervously. "Mean son of a gun. If Holbrook crossed him, he wouldn't walk away." The brothers exchanged a look. They had a name. Back at the prison, Evelyn met them in the visitation room. Her hair was grayer, her face lined with years of suffering, but her eyes still burned with quiet strength. "Mom," Daniel said, gripping her hand through the glass, "we're close." We found a name. Victor Kane. Evelyn's lips parted. "Victor? Yes. I remember Holbrook mentioned that name once. Said he'd rather die than owe him another dime." Her voice trembled, but there was a spark of hope. "Find him. Prove it. Don't let me die with this stain on my name." The next week was a blur. Marcus tracked down old gang associates. Caleb broke into public records to find Kane's last known address. Daniel pieced together court files, arrest logs, and debts owed. Every trail pointed to the same truth. Holbrook had been tangled in something bigger. Gambling debts, threats, money owed to men who didn't forgive. And Kane? He had disappeared shortly after Holbrook did. It couldn't be coincidence. One night, as rain lashed the windows, the three brothers sat around a table, exhaustion heavy in their bones. Daniel laid it out. "If we can prove Kane killed Holbrook, Mom goes free, but without a body, without hard evidence." Marcus spoke for the first time in hours. His voice was low, steady. "Then we dig, literally. Where I saw it happen, it was near the old mill. If Holbrook's body was buried, it's there." Caleb's eyes widened. "After 25 years?" Marcus nodded grimly. "It's the only chance we have." The following morning, they drove out to the abandoned mill. The building was crumbling, graffiti marking its walls, weeds swallowing the lot. The air felt heavy, like it carried ghosts. They searched for hours, combing through overgrown brush, following Marcus's hazy memories. Finally, Caleb's shovel struck something solid. A hollow thud echoed in the silence. He froze, looked up at his brothers. Together they dug, hands blistered, breath ragged, until fragments emerged from the dirt. A tattered belt buckle, pieces of bone. Daniel's chest tightened. "Oh my God, it's him!" They called the authorities. Within hours, the site was swarming with police tape, forensic teams, and flashing lights. Reporters circled like vultures. The brothers stood to the side, mud on their clothes, rain on their faces, watching as 25 years of buried truth came to the surface. For the first time in decades, Evelyn's innocence was no longer just her word against the world. It had a body, a name, a killer who wasn't her. And for the first time, freedom felt possible. The courthouse felt colder than usual that morning. Reporters crowded the steps, their cameras flashing, voices echoing as they shouted questions. Inside, the benches were packed. Everyone wanted to see if the woman who once saved 3 homeless kids would now be saved by them. Carla sat stiffly at the defense table, her hands folded, her face pale but calm. She looked older, smaller somehow, but when her eyes found Jamal, Anthony, and Deshawn, something lit up in her expression. A quiet strength. Across the aisle, the prosecutor's team looked confident. They had built a mountain of circumstantial evidence, and for weeks they painted Carla as a woman desperate enough to commit fraud. But today was different. Today, the brothers were ready. "Your Honor," Jamal began, standing tall, "we ask permission to present new evidence." The judge raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Proceed." Jamal walked toward the center of the courtroom, holding a thick binder. "This is the original set of invoices that the prosecution claimed Miss Carla signed to embezzle funds from the shelter." He paused. "But these are forgeries." Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor jumped to his feet. "Objection!" "Overruled," the judge said firmly. "Mr. Carter, continue." Jamal handed the binder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. We had them examined by a handwriting expert. The signatures don't match Carla's. But more importantly, he motioned to Anthony, who wheeled out a projector. There's metadata hidden in the scanned files. They were created years after the alleged crime by someone inside the shelter administration. The courtroom buzzed. The prosecutor's face hardened. Then, the last person anyone expected rose from the back bench. Marcus. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. Your Honor, I need to testify. The judge squinted. You've already given testimony. I lied, Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Silence swept across the courtroom. I lied because I was scared, because I thought it would protect me. His eyes darted toward Carla, then the brothers. But it's time the truth comes out. The judge sighed, then nodded. Very well. Take the stand. Marcus sat down, his shoulders slumped as if the weight of years pressed down on him. Carla never stole money. She never signed those papers. I helped someone fabricate them. The room erupted. Carla's hands flew to her mouth. Who? Jamal pressed gently. Marcus swallowed. It was William Greer, the shelter's former financial director. He wanted to cover up his own theft. He said if we pinned it on Carla, no one would question it. She was the face of the shelter, the one who held all the responsibility. He promised me money. Protection. I was stupid. His voice cracked. I watched this woman raise me, feed me, love me like her own son, and I betrayed her. Anthony leaned forward. Do you have proof? Marcus nodded weakly. Yes, bank statements, old emails. I kept them hidden just in case. I was too afraid to come forward, but your investigation pushed me. You forced me to face what I did. The prosecutor scrambled to his feet. This is hearsay. This witness has already admitted to lying under oath. Sit down, the judge thundered. The jury will decide credibility. The brothers moved with precision. Anthony displayed the bank statements on the projector. Deposits that matched the missing funds, all directed to Greer's personal accounts. Deshawn read out emails where Greer pressured Marcus to keep quiet. The evidence stacked higher and higher, and the prosecution's case crumbled like sand. For the first time, Carla's attorney smiled. Jamal closed the presentation with quiet power. This woman gave us a home when the world left us on the streets. She gave us love when we had nothing. And for 25 years, she carried the weight of a crime she didn't commit. Today, we're here not just as her sons, but as men demanding justice. The prosecutor tried to salvage his case, hammering Marcus with questions. So you admit you lied before? How can we trust you now? Marcus looked directly at the jury. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not lying to save myself. I'm telling the truth to save the only mother I've ever known. A hush fell. The jury leaned in, hanging on every word. By the end of the day, the prosecution had no path forward. Their star witness had collapsed, their evidence exposed as forged. The judge's instructions to the jury were simple. Consider the evidence carefully, and remember that doubt favors the defendant. As the gavel struck, court adjourned. Carla exhaled a shaky breath. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She turned to her boys, her sons truly, and whispered, You saved me. Jamal gripped her hand. No, Mama. You saved us first. Marcus lingered, guilt etched deep on his face. But Carla, despite everything, reached for him too. You came back, she said softly. That's what matters. He broke down, sobbing into her shoulder, as reporters outside prepared their headlines. Black woman took in 3 homeless kids. 25 years later, they saved her life in court. The courthouse emptied slowly, like a storm finally passing. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut through the clouds, casting a golden hue across the city. Carla stepped out first, her frame frail but upright, holding Jamal's arm for balance. Anthony and Deshawn flanked her, their presence protective, like the guardians she had once been for them. Reporters swarmed, microphones flashing like weapons. "Carla, how does it feel to be free? Do you blame the system for failing you? Will you press charges against William Greer?" Carla offered no speeches, just a trembling smile, a tear-streaked face, and the whisper of one word: grateful. The brothers guided her through the chaos, shielding her as they had once needed shielding themselves. They made it to the car, and for the first time in years, Carla exhaled a breath that felt like home. Back at the shelter, the air smelled of fresh paint and hope. Volunteers and children cheered as Carla walked through the door. Many of them hadn't known the full story, only rumors, whispers. But now they saw the truth, and their voices rose in celebration. Deshawn lifted one of the younger kids onto his shoulders. "See? She's back. Stronger than ever." Anthony stood in the corner, scanning the crowd, already calculating how to keep the shelter's funding safe from vultures like Greer. His phone buzzed constantly, donors, old friends, even journalists offering interviews. Jamal watched it all quietly. For him, this wasn't just a victory, it was a promise fulfilled. The woman who saved them when no one else cared was finally free. But Marcus lingered near the door, apart from the celebration. His confession had saved Carla, but the guilt remained. The shelter's children stared at him with wary eyes. He felt the weight of every bad choice he had made pressing down, and he wondered if forgiveness was something he'd ever truly earn. Late that night, when the shelter had quieted, Carla sat alone in her office. The same desk where, years ago, she had signed permission slips, balanced books, and drafted dreams. On the desk now lay two things: a framed photo of the boys as children, and a folder Anthony had left behind. Inside the folder was a single sheet, an arrest warrant. Not for her, but for William Greer. Evidence the brothers had uncovered pointed directly to him. The authorities would pursue him now, no doubt. But Carla hesitated. She traced her fingers over the paper. Justice, at last. But she knew men like Greer didn't go down quietly. As she closed the folder, the phone rang. She frowned. It was nearly midnight. She picked it up. A voice, calm and unfamiliar, slid through the receiver. "Congratulations, Ms. Carla. I see you've won your freedom. But some debts. They don't vanish in a courtroom." Her heart thudded. "Who is this?" The line went dead. Moments later, Jamal, Anthony, and Deshawn entered the office. They had sensed her unease. Perhaps they always would. She showed them the folder, then repeated the call. Jamal clenched his jaw. "Then it's not over." Anthony nodded grimly. "We've beaten the system once. We'll do it again." Deshawn smirked faintly, trying to mask his nerves. Whoever's still out there doesn't know who they're messing with. Carla looked at her sons, no, her men, and felt both pride and dread. She had raised fighters, yes, but she had also raised protectors, and now it seemed they would need both. She whispered, almost to herself, "The storm isn't done with us yet." Outside, the city lights flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a man watched the shelter from the shadows, his face obscured, his phone glowing in his hand. The story was far from over. If you want to hear the rest of Carla's story, and many more untold stories of survival, justice, and hope, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell. You don't want to miss what comes next.